Welcome to Locked On NBA Game Night for Wednesday, November 6th. I'm Wes Goldberg here with Tony East. Coming up, no games on Election Tuesday, but that gives us a chance to look back at the most important games of the season so far, including a contender emerging in the West and in the East.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Game Night, every game, every night. Wes Goldberg here with Tony East. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Doing something a little bit different today because there were no games Tuesday night as the NBA took the day off for Election Day. So now that we're more than 2 weeks into the season, Tony, I thought we could look back on the most important games of the season so far. We've got a Cavaliers matchup, a Celtics game, Lakers. We're going to be talking about a few different teams here. But I thought we could start with opening night when the Thunder throttled the Nuggets 102-87. And we did learn a couple of things in this game. Number one, the Thunder are exactly who we thought they were, but maybe even just better, right? They were the favorites coming into the year to come out of the Western Conference, and boy, did they look like it on opening night. Number two, Chet Holmgren has grown up. There was him standing up Nikola Jokic in the post and then dunking on the other end. That's probably still the highlight of his season so far. And then number three, we learned that the Nuggets are probably going to be in trouble. Russell Westbrook was a minus 24 coming off the bench for them in that game. Of those three sort of things, those takeaways, where do you want to start?
The Thunder defense has been like maybe the story of the season, which is funny because they got Caruso, they got Hartenstein, who hasn't even played. And the whole thought coming into the season was like, oh, this is going to be a really good defensive team. They were a good defensive team last year before they got either those players. And Giddey's like a fine defender, but they got way better at all those spots. And then they played the Nuggets, who are considered a contender entering the game and probably still are, even though they haven't played awesome. And three Thunder starters shoot below 32% in that game. And they dominated, right? Like they didn't even play very well, and they looked way better than Denver. And that's held up all season. They've given up more than 104 once all year. That's insane in the current NBA. Insane. That's like 2005 numbers, maybe like 2010. If you look at defensive ratings still to this day in the league, the third best defense is the Magic at 107.5. I'd consider that like normal good, right? There's a lot of teams between 107 and 109. The second best defense is the Warriors at 102.1. That looks great. Then you go up 9 more points, and you get to the Thunder's defensive rating at 93.8. It's insane how much better they've been on defense than everybody else. And we saw it on opening night against a team that was considered to be and has shown signs of life recently, a really good offense with an MVP candidate.
Last year's best defensive team by defensive rating was Minnesota with a defensive rating of 108.4. And they were the best defense in the league by a mile, by more than 2 points per 100 possessions. And Oklahoma City saw their 108.4 and was like, bet. 93.8 is their defensive rating. It is like teams are trying not to score against them, is what this defensive rating suggests. There have been 9 games this NBA season where a team has scored 94 points per 100 possessions or less. And 5 of those games came against the Oklahoma City Thunder defense.
Wow, that's a good poll.
That's a wild bananas stat. This Thunder team is so good. You already mentioned the fact that Isaiah Hartenstein has not even played for them, and that was maybe their biggest, depending on between him and Caruso, acquisition of the offseason. This is not a team that has been a good, necessarily defensive rebounding team. They're sort of middle of the pack in defensive rebounding percentage, and this was after last year when they were in the bottom 5 defensive rebounding percentage. Like, they're not ending possessions by getting a stop and rebounding the ball and taking it the other way. You know, they're doing that at a league average rate, but what they're doing is averaging more steals per game than any other team in the NBA. They're averaging 13.1 steals per game. Again, just another bananas off the charts, doesn't look possible number. The Hawks are second at 9.9. The Cavs are tied for second at 9.9.
Jeez.
So they're averaging 3 more steals per game than the next team. They're ending possessions not by forcing a miss and getting the rebound, the traditional normal way teams defend and end possessions. No, they're just doing it by saying, like, you don't even get to take the shot. We're just taking the ball away from you. And so that was evident in this Nuggets game. They did get a few steals in this one. They had 9 steals, which feels like not a lot for this team. They've had games where they've had 18 steals this season. They put Trae Young in a straitjacket when they played the Hawks, who's one of the best ball handlers and passers in the NBA. This Oklahoma City defense is terrifying. They come at you in waves. It's Chet Holmgren, it's Lou Dort, it's Alex Caruso. All these, they don't have a bad defender in the core rotation. You could say their worst defender in the starting lineup might be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And that says more about the elite defenders around him than it does about him. He's a guy who also is routinely near the top of the league in steals and deflections. So, this Thunder defense has been, I think you nailed it, maybe the story of the season so far.
Their worst defenders, what? Ousmane Dieng? Maybe? Right. I mean, we'll see when everybody's healthy, if he's even playing. Like, it's insane. They can just throw bodies at you all game long. All right, let me be that guy, Wes. I'm sorry. Their schedule has not been very hard. I will include that in any analysis of the Thunder. The Nuggets game specifically matters for what we're talking about because the Nuggets they have Jokic. Their offense has looked really good at their best. They just had a monster fourth quarter to beat the Raptors the last day of games. The last time you and I talked, they had a monster fourth quarter in overtime against the Nets to get a win. They also played the Bulls, the Hawks, the Blazers, the Thunder, and the Clippers, and the Bankero-less Magic. That's not exactly like the craziest offensive teams. So I will put that into this conversation. I will then say 93.8 is absurd against me and you and it's crazy.
They can give up 6 more points per 100 possessions and still be the best defense in the NBA by a mile.
Yeah, exactly. So I am looking forward to when coming up, they have Denver again. In Denver, they play Golden State pretty soon. They've got the Suns and Mavs in the same week in the middle of November. Those will be the tests of okay, they are going to be insanely elite versus just regular. Because they were 4th last year, right? We know they're good no matter what. But if they're this far above everybody else, even against those teams, pack it up. Let's schedule the finals now.
Chet Holmgren may be the leader right now for Defensive Player of the Year. And he's the anchor of that defense, and he's earned it, right? He's exactly sort of what you want out of that kind of player. His rim protection stats are insane. The eye test bears all of it out. He's been great. On the other side of this, we did, I think, learn a little bit about the Denver Nuggets, and I think specifically it was a sign that this team was going to be in trouble and that their offseason additions weren't going to work out. Russell Westbrook was a minus 24 in this game. So Denver was outscored by 24 points when Russell Westbrook was in this game. They essentially lost this game when Russell Westbrook was in the game. That's what kind of lost it for them. Meanwhile, on the other side, Alex Caruso, OKC's big addition, the Thunder were a plus 19 in Caruso's minutes, so couldn't be more different. Going back to Denver's side, they were minus 6 in Dario Saric's minutes, minus 23 in Julian Strawther's minutes, minus 13 in Peyton Watson's minutes. This is the trend going forward for Denver. Their starting lineup is still very good. Their bench is the worst in the NBA. It just is. And it's why they are where they are. And I think a big reason why, we have to rethink about the Denver Nuggets championship viability here.
Do you know their offensive rating with Jokic off the court right now?
I think you do.
90.4. That's terrible.
God.
That's like playing the Nugget, or that's like playing the Thunder every game.
It is.
It's so bad. They cannot score without them. They are 4-3, and they'll smile and go, "Great, we're 4-3. That's a winning record." My God, are the margins thin for their being 4-3? Right? OT against the Raptors in Toronto, very close. OT against the Nets in Brooklyn, very close. That was a Dorian Finney-Smith 3 away from being a loss, and they just snuck by the Raptors at home, like I said 2 days ago. Right. And those were all coin flip games. When I watched the Nuggets, the best game they played, they lost when they played in Minnesota last week. They looked pretty good that night. Minnesota just was a little better. Right. So I think they're still good. They played good against Minnesota, who's played well this season, but they got kind of handled by the Clippers. They really struggled against some East teams that aren't supposed to be very good. Congrats on blowing out the Utah Jazz without Lauri Markkanen, but they have not ever really looked that threatening, even though their record shows that, yes, when Jokic is on the floor, they're still awesome. They can beat anybody, but they have 18 minutes a game where they're just laughably bad, and that's terrible.
There's a reason why they have the lineup that averages the most minutes per game together
Yes.
so far this season. It's because literally every minute, and this is not an exaggeration, literally every minute that starting lineup isn't on the court together could lose them the game. It is that important. You mentioned the 2 overtime games. If that starting lineup is off the court for another minute in regulation, they just lose those games, right? They don't even get to overtime. And so they are walking a razor's edge right now, and I cannot take them seriously as a contender. If this is the bench, if this is what it is going forward, because even in the playoffs, when the bench is shortened and you do play your starters more minutes, the bench still plays some minutes. You are still going to need something from Westbrook, Saric, Strother, Watson, any of these guys. And based on what we've seen, I don't think that's going to happen. And it just feels like they need at least 2 more guys. And it's been talked about enough, but I don't know how they make that happen. So we did learn a lot about the Thunder and the Nuggets on opening night, and most of that has borne out over these 2 weeks.
We can also just say, hey, guess what? Jokic is playing 38 minutes a game and averaging 30, 12 and a half, and 10. They'll be fine. Maybe they'll just be fine. But man, are they bad for those non-Jokic minutes. So
it's tough.
It's tough. And now Murray's hurt, right? Like, this is a key stretch for them.
A new contender may have emerged in the Eastern Conference. We'll buy or sell the Cavs as a title contender next here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode is brought to you by Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments can happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's Hims, HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. Hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compound products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. We'll be right back. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA Game Night every game, every night, your first listen of the day. The best way to support the show is to subscribe on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. We're recapping the biggest games, most important games of the season so far. Our next game, I'll take you back to October 30th, Tony, when the Cavaliers blew out the LA Lakers at home 134-110. The Cavs improved to 5-0, beating the Lakers 2 nights after beating the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden. You could honestly take any of these games and turn and say that one of them is one of the most important games of the season. I'll just go with the second win sort of in this little span here because it just, to me, reinforced the idea that the Cavaliers are a legitimate team to beat in the Eastern Conference. There's also a Lakers part of side that I want to get to here after this in a second. But in terms of the Cavaliers, they are one of the best teams in the league right now. They are still undefeated at 8-0. They have a point differential outscoring their opponents by 13.2 points per game. Donovan Mitchell looks great. Into his new extension, looks more comfortable than ever. Darius Garland looks like he's having a bounce back year. Jarrett Allen is having his typical rim protection, defensive type of stuff. And then Evan Mobley has been a revelation in terms of how it is that Kenny Atkinson is using him. He looks like he's a part of the offense more, not just standing in the corner, waiting for the passes to come to him. He is a functional part of this offense and maybe even a central part of this offense. I love everything I've seen from the Cleveland Cavaliers. And it's to the point now where I have to reconsider, okay, what tier are they really in the Eastern Conference? There's a lot of mess going on in the Eastern Conference right now, but messy is not the Cleveland Cavaliers. What have you thought about Cleveland so far?
if this keeps up, Wes, every person who does what we do and talks about the NBA all the time is going to say, hey, maybe this coaching change could work out like Kenny Atkinson in Cleveland. Because, man, oh, man, are they gelling. What's the adage about contenders or elite contenders being top 5 in both offense and defense? Because right now there's only 2 teams top 5 in both. It's the Celtics and the Cavs. The Cavs, top 5 on both ends. They were good on defense for forever with their size, but they are crushing on offense in a way that they usually haven't with this core. To me, the thing that has separated this year from last year, Mobley's ascent is a big part of it, but Darius Garland looks so good again. He is back to the guy that was an all-star a few years ago, if not a little better. Really efficient from 3, has not missed a free throw this season. His passing's back up. He's keeping his turnovers down. Currently averaging 20.5 and 6.5 on absurd true shooting. I want to say like 65% or something completely crazy with his volume. 66, excuse me. He looks really good again. And so they're not like Donovan Mitchell's always been awesome for the Cavs, but now they have 2 lethal ball handlers and one is on the floor all the time. That kind of applies to their bigs as well. So like last year, everybody talked about the stretch where the Cavs looked amazing when Garland was hurt, right? And that's because he was less effective last year. He had this jaw thing, it like messed with his grip strength and all that. Now he looks awesome again. And so they always have 2 at fewest really good players on the floor who are pretty good, at least on both ends. And they've looked really good. I think that's been the biggest thing for me with their offensive growth. And yes, Mobley also looks like the guy that everybody, including the Cavs who paid him, hoped he could be. They look awesome. They haven't been as banged up as last year. They are, the Celtics are in their conference. So it's hard to say exactly what level of contender you call the Cavs. But I mean, if they made the conference finals right now, absolutely nobody would be surprised. They look absurdly good.
Yeah, the thing with Cleveland was always a fit issue. Nobody ever doubted the talent, right? You look at the Cavaliers roster, particularly last year before the Knicks made all their moves, and you would say, okay, like starting 5s, nobody in the East rivals Cleveland's just level of talent outside of Boston, right? You've got Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, all-stars. Jarrett Allen, an all-star. Evan Mobley, a guy who we all think is going to make an all-star, maybe multiple all-star games in his career. Defensive Player of the Year type of candidate. You've got Karis LeVert coming off the bench, right? A guy who's been a central figure in offenses across his career. They still haven't played with Max Strus yet this season. They've got a lot of real talent on that roster. It was just about all of it coming together. Mobley becoming more of a hub on offense, I think, has really been a good call by Kenny Atkinson. Hey, put him in the middle of the court, triple threat spot, high post, whatever, and just sort of let him dish and get going and get guys going. But I also think part of it, too, is last year under JB Bickerstaff, it felt like Cleveland was a lot of just sort of pass for the sake of passing, swing the ball around the perimeter for the sake of swinging it. And they did pass the ball a lot. Like they were one of the top teams in just passes per game. This year, they're not passing as many times per possession, but they have soared up those standings in terms of drives per game. And when you're driving and kicking, a lot of those fit issues just sort of wash away, right? Like it doesn't matter who's driving and kick. It doesn't matter if Donovan Mitchell is driving and kicking to Darius Garland, because Darius Garland is a great catch and shoot 3-point shooter. And so when Donovan Mitchell is driving and kicking to Darius Garland, all of a sudden the fit looks a lot better, as opposed to both of them just sort of standing on the perimeter determining which one's going to pass to the other one, which seemed like it was the case when they were on the court together last season. So I think Kenny Atkinson has done a lot of just really smart stuff, but maybe also simple, kind of obvious things. But sometimes that's the deal. And getting those guys to buy into doing those simple, obvious things isn't always as easy as it looks. On the other side of this in particular, October 30th game, well, before I get to that, where did the Cavaliers rank in the Eastern Conference? I think everybody would have still the Celtics as the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. But to me, given how Milwaukee has fallen off, we still haven't really seen the 76ers at full force here. Joel Embiid hasn't played yet. The Knicks, I would still maybe put them in the same tier as Cleveland, even though Cleveland's 8-0 and the Knicks are 3-3 as we're talking here, just because the Knicks are still figuring it out, but I think they will figure it out. So that's more of a projection. But, Cleveland's like firmly in that second tier, 1B behind Boston.
Yeah, can I redo a lot of games? These are so the Cavs play the Celtics on November 19th. Here are the Cavs games between us talking and that game. At New Orleans, then home for Golden State and Brooklyn, at Chicago, at Philly, we'll see if Embiid's back, at Chicago, and then home against Charlotte. They could be undefeated for that game. It's not, I wouldn't predict it, but it's not unreasonable that it could be like the one-loss Celtics and the undefeated Cavs. That will be the test of where they're really at and where their tier lies. But I agree with you. I mean, they might be in their own tier as number 2 right this second. They've been playing that well.
We also learned a little bit more about the Lakers. This was more like underscoring the problems that the Lakers are going to have to this point, right? So the Lakers right now are 4-3. By no means are they bad. They do have a negative point differential, but small sample size, whatever. The Lakers in this game against Cleveland gave up 68 points in the paint. This is an issue for the Lakers even still. Like, this is why they rank near the bottom of the league in defensive rating, is because they just give up points in the paint all the time. Watching the Lakers in this game and in the games since then, to me, the reasons why are obvious. Number one is behind Anthony Davis, it's Jackson Hayes, and he's just not a good defensive player. They don't have a lot of options. Rui Hachimura is very hit or miss defensively. D'Angelo Russell is almost a non-factor at the point of attack, which means it just makes those guys' jobs even harder. And then LeBron James, because of the position he plays, is oftentimes the low man. And this is probably the worst defensive season I've seen from LeBron, which is, I guess, expected when he's almost 40 years old. But he's just clearly coasting on that end, right? We know LeBron. It's not a matter of not knowing where to be. It's just a matter of wanting to be where he needs to be, wanting to put the work into getting to where he needs to be on the court. And so far this year, he hasn't done it. I don't know how JJ Redick fixes it, but the points in the paint have been a big issue for the Lakers.
Yeah, their depth in general hasn't been that awesome. Anthony Davis has been ridiculous. Like, he might be the MVP favorite right now. It doesn't matter. It's been 7 games. I don't want to say the word MVP again. Reeves has been good. LeBron's been LeBron-y, but after that, they just, like, some guys are good some nights and some guys aren't as good. And on defense, they've been consistently very mediocre outside of Anthony Davis. And so that lack of consistency really makes it hard for them to just completely throttle someone. You know how they won on opening night, that game that everybody was so impressed when they beat Minnesota? You and I did that show. They were up 15 at one point when they were 3 for 20 from deep in that game because they defended really well, really well. And yeah, Minnesota was missing some threes, but like, the Lakers deserve credit for how they were making that happen. And since then, their defense hasn't felt nearly the same. Got absolutely smacked by the Cavs, as we're talking about. Just lost to the Pistons by 12 the other night. Like, Cade was kind of getting to his spots, getting to the rim, making a move. And whoever was on him, Reeves, Russell, whoever, couldn't keep him in front at all. So, yes, they have offensive talents that can do stuff or even have done stuff effectively this season, but their depth is not particularly consistent to me. Gabe Vincent, oof, so far this season. Max Christie gets an oof so far this season. And that combined with their defense, just, I think they'll be fine. They have 2 awesome studs. And again, AD's been probably the best player in the NBA so far, but they don't look like an awesome team. They look like a pretty good team to me.
They're giving up 24 points per 100 possessions more than the Thunder are. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Another weird thing, though, you're mentioning the depth, but also the Lakers are minus 17 with LeBron on the court this season.
Wow.
Or I'm sorry, not this season. They were minus 17 with LeBron on the court in that Cavaliers game, but they're losing the minutes he's on the court this season by like 2 point something points per game. That is not LeBron James, right? LeBron James, you win the money, you win the minutes where he's on the court. If you're not winning the minutes that LeBron James is on the court, that's a problem.
Wait, this is remarkable to me. Minus 3.5 net rating with him on, plus 1.7 off. Their offense and defense have been better. That is remarkable. That will not hold, but that is certainly a big story to keep an eye on.
Yep. LeBron James has to just try harder. That's all. There was one game on the schedule that highlighted exactly how good one contender is, while also showing just how much trouble another should-be contender is. We'll tell you who they are and what's going on next here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode is brought to you by Built. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built Points has been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to join built.com/lockedonnba. That's join Built, JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. Join built.com/LockedOnNBA to start earning points with your rent payments today. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time Picks, curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and any event that you want to go to. By using the all-in pricing feature, you see the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. With Seat Views, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. With their lowest price guarantee, if you find a cheaper ticket, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. No games talking about today. Instead, we are going through the most important games of the season so far. We're going to get to our final game that we're looking back on here. It was on October 28th when the Boston Celtics beat the Milwaukee Bucks 119-108. Tony, this game told us a lot about where both of these teams are. Number one, the Bucks lost despite getting 30 from Giannis and 33 from Damian Lillard. And the Celtics won despite getting 15 points from Jason Tatum. To me, that's exactly where both of these teams are. No matter how good Giannis and Dame are, the Bucks still stink. Their depth is an issue. Chris Middleton still hasn't played. There's organization, coaching, personnel issues up and down the board in Milwaukee to the point where people are wondering if Giannis is even going to stick around. And meanwhile, the Celtics, they just keep rolling. It doesn't really matter if Tatum has a good or a great night. He's mostly been very good. This is probably his worst game of the season. Jaylen Brown has been out of the lineup for the last couple of nights. And it just hasn't mattered who they start in his place, whether or not they're dealing with injuries. They still haven't had Kristaps Porzingis. It just hasn't mattered. They just keep rolling. But this game sort of encapsulated just exactly where these two teams are, considering the Celtics beat the Bucks pretty handedly, despite big games from Giannis and Damian Lillard. What do you think about where the Bucks are right now?
You know what raised my eyebrows about the Bucks before they even played a game, Wes? The King, Jake Fisher, reporting, they might be trying to trade away Marjon Beauchamp so they can sign Thanasis Antetokounmpo. Obviously, everybody knows who Thanasis is. He's Giannis's brother. He's also out for the year. He cannot play games. He's injured, and they still want him. Why? Why? That made me go, what is the point of that? What are they thinking? What are they doing? It hasn't happened. They declined Beauchamp's option, whatever. That doesn't matter for games. That made me wonder about the vibes a little bit for the Giannis-led Bucks. And they won on opening night. Congrats. They beat the Sixers, who had nobody available. And they've lost every game since. Thank you, Lauri Markkanen and the Jazz, for making the Bucks not have the worst record in the NBA right now. They have tied for the worst record, right? That's how bad the Bucks have been. And you're right. That game was, Giannis was great. Dame was great. And Peyton Pritchard was just as good. And they lost, right? And then a couple nights later, the John Morant show happens in Memphis. I bring that game up because I watched that one start to finish. And Giannis was incredible. He had 37 and 11. And their next high scorer was Brook Lopez with 12, right? They look so, people have used this word, and I think it's perfect. They look creaky and slow, and there's just no like zip or pop or burst or athleticism ever outside of the Greek Freak, who's amazing. They just, I don't know how they get that with what they have, but if he's off the floor, they're not quick enough. Dame has not been nearly good enough. I mean, he's had good games. We're talking about one right now, but they need him to be awesome so they can do stuff without Giannis out there. That hasn't happened. Their signings that I really liked from the offseason haven't really panned out the way they wanted. It's just been like they need Andre Jackson a lot because he gives them energy and pop and all that stuff I just talked about. It's really strange that this team doesn't click. They need more. They need like one more of everything, and they can't get it with what they have.
Yeah, they played Andre Jackson Jr. 25 minutes, AJ Green 34 minutes on Monday night in a loss against Cleveland. And Jackson had 7 points, but he was a +7 in his minutes on the court. AJ Green had 21 points off the bench. And I saw it out there like on Twitter and stuff like, oh yeah, they just got to play AJ Green and Andre Jackson Jr. more. If AJ Green and Andre Jackson Jr. are the answers to your problem, then you have a serious problem. I mean, what are we doing here? And Giannis, meanwhile, he's still averaging MVP. Here's his averages: 31 points per game, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. And here's the crazy thing: he's still the Bucks are still being outscored by 5 points per game when he's on the court. This team stinks. The supporting cast stinks. The coaching stinks. Everything about this team is bad. And you also mentioned like the lack of zip, the lack of all this stuff. Even like, I know Giannis's stats are what they are. I'm not feeling him out there the way I used to feel him out there. Like, there's not even oomph with Giannis. And this defense, I know that there's personnel problems. It shouldn't be this bad. It still should not be this bad if you have Giannis and Brook Lopez as your back line. There should be like a floor that's a little bit higher than where they are now. They are 22nd in defensive rating. I haven't done the math on exactly how far behind they are, the Thunder. But this team, just with Giannis and Brook and some of the infrastructure there, they should just be a little bit better than that. I would expect them to be closer to average than they are. There's no organizing principle for them on either side of the court. And more than that, nobody really seems like they want to be there. Right? Like, we know Damian Lillard never wanted to be there. And that's sort of hovered over the Damian Lillard experience for a year plus now. And it's starting to feel like Giannis doesn't really want to be here, especially if you believe some of these headlines that have been out there about his troubling future potentially in Milwaukee. So I was trying to find what game was just going to sort of like, okay, here it is. To me, it just looked like the Celtics, even though they only won this game by 11 points, and they really started to kind of pull away in this game in the middle of the fourth quarter. They just looked flatly better than them because this was a bad Celtics performance and about as good as a performance as you can get from Giannis and Dame in a single game as you can. And it wasn't even close in the end. And that to me was so I chose this game just because it showed the gap between these two teams that most people thought were going to be contenders coming into the season. One clearly still is in the Boston Celtics, and one clearly very much is not in the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, they had back-to-back double-digit losses to the Bulls and Nets right before that, too, right? Like, that doesn't really inspire confidence. They've actually played okay in these last two against the Cavs. If they lose to the Jazz at home on Thursday, I mean, sound the alarm, right? Like, something fishy would be going on there. Here's a question for you, right?
Okay.
They have some rookies who maybe are the answer, but they don't play. Who's the second most athletic player on the Bucks?
Is it Beauchamp? I mean,
yeah, it's
the guy they're trying to trade.
It used to, like Pat Connaughton used to be, right? But I don't think of him like that anymore. Like, maybe it's Andre Jackson. Dalen Wright's kind of fast. I don't know. They don't really have that anymore. And shout out to Eric Name, who just owns a beat like nobody in this industry. He tweeted this today. There's no way this is screenshotable come April. He tweets, after last night's game, I told Doc Rivers that only 12 of the 150 teams that started the season 1-6 have made the playoffs. Doc Rivers' response, we will make the playoffs. I'm not worried about that. When has Doc Rivers ever had quotes come back to bite him? So, yes, I think the Bucks are better than they've started, certainly, but they do not look very good. They need a good win, and they need to show, like, here's how we can do it, because that's what you said it earlier. That's what I think they're missing.
Gary Trent Jr. hasn't been able to hit the ocean with the basketball so far this season. And you would imagine he's a good shooter. That has to come back around at some point. Bobby Portis has been outright bad for them, and it feels like he shouldn't have hit that cliff just yet in his career. It feels like he should be better. So if you're looking for reasons for optimism, it's that Giannis is still at the peak of his powers. Damian Lillard is still capable of winning you quarters at a time. And if you get a little bit of a bounce back from Gary Trent and Bobby Portis, now you have 5 functional rotation players, including Brook Lopez. And then who knows? Maybe you do get an Andre Jackson Jr. elite. Maybe AJ Green really is important to this team coming off the bench. DeLon Wright needs to shoot the ball. He's only averaging 2 shot attempts per game this year. Teams are just leaving him open. He has to he's got to at least pretend to be involved in the offense a little bit more. But so there's reasons why maybe you could talk yourself into. As bad as they are, as many issues as they have, coaching, personnel, whatever it might be, they shouldn't be 1-6 bad, right? Like you said, they shouldn't be 1 win away from having the worst record in the league. That's not a team with Giannis shouldn't be that bad. At the same time, you can look at that and be like, wow, they really shouldn't be this bad. So something really wrong is going on underneath the surface, but I guess we will find out. That wraps up Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcasts.